Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to another episode of Game Break. I am Charles, coming to you today with another episode of World and Economica. Now, last time round, we revealed our diabolical plan to Lisa to enter into the investing contest and team up with Hagana to do so. But now it's up to us to talk Hagana into it. And considering how things were when we kind of left off with Hagana, this might be a tough sell. I don't know how this is going to go down, but I'm hopeful. I mean, the plot is leading us towards a team, or a team up of some sort, so let's hope that this all works out and see where the story goes from here. Lisa called for me 10 minutes later, and I went out to the living room.
I'm sorry.
Those were the first words said to me the instant I returned to the living room and faced Hagana with a table between us. It was so sudden, I forgot to breathe. Her eyes still had some traces of her crying, and her lips were still somewhat sullenly tight with stubbornness. Hagana didn't look at me and stared at the table, but I clearly heard her say she was sorry. When I looked at Lisa haltingly, she had a satisfied smile on her face.
I apologized.
When Hagana finally opened her mouth, that was what came out. Lisa's smiling face remained frozen that way, but I was more relieved at those words. I heard. When I said that, she finally looked at me. That usual piercing gaze was the same, but the sharp, stray, cat-like suspicion wasn't there. It was more like a kid who was being stubborn and had on a brave face.
So, Hal, you're fine with this too, right?
It's good. I shrugged.
Well then, can you explain things more concretely? I didn't really get it with just one run-through.
With that embarrassed laugh, she probably really didn't understand the stuff very well. But, even if that were true, then that meant that Lisa trusted me despite not really grasping what I had said. It's not that difficult. Win the investing contest. Get 200,000 mools. When I said it that directly, Hagana's eyes went so wide they looked almost round. There's that thing called stock investing, right? In a simulation of that, compete with other people, and the guy who earns the most wins. First prize is 200,000 mools. Second is 500,000.
So, we just have to get second, right?
Third place gets 30,000 mools, which I'd be thankful for. Lisa pressed her lips together lightly, then urged me with her hands to go on.
But I don't know anything about stocks.
Hagana was the one who interrupted. She was glaring at me bravely, but I saw that she was uneasy. Somehow, once you noticed these inconsistencies, Hagana really did seem unsteady and fragile. You're smart, aren't you? But it seemed that she had the strength left to handle my jabs.
Compared to you, brat? Hagana!
Lisa gave a small warning. Choking off her words with a small ugh, she looked at Lisa. She then looked at me.
Compared to you, Hal.
Then there's no problem, because the rules are very simple.
Really?
Lisa was the one who asked. The basic idea is to buy a stock when it's low and sell when it's high. Simple, right? Both Lisa and Hagana looked at each other quickly, then turned to look at me at the same time. That's really all there is. Of course, there's a way to sell high and buy back when it's low, too. But that stuff is for later. Right now, the basis of our talk lies elsewhere. As I spoke, I worked with the laptop and drew up a stock displaying its trading info. It was the most famous company on the moon, Emerald Industries. If you look at stocks closely, it boils down to one thing. This company's stock, let's say tomorrow, the day after, or even in the next few minutes. In any case, sometime in the future, if you can predict that it will be higher or lower, then you'd be able to profit from it. Spinning the laptop around, I set it in front of Lisa and Hagana. Lisa looked like she was getting a headache just from glancing at the numbers and graphs. Hagana peered intently at it, like a cat peering into a mirror. There's a number of places to get clues. Leaning over, I turned the laptop halfway towards myself. Hagana looked at me, then at the laptop. First.
Hal, why don't you come over here?
Hmm?
Well, isn't it hard to explain like that?
Saying that, she got up from her chair and walked to the other side of the table. That is to say, my side, and sat next to me.
I'm just absolutely no good at this stuff,
Lisa said with true distaste. For some weirdo who came to the moon to learn about religious history, she probably didn't mix well with the moon colony's biggest alchemic art. At the very least, listen. As I spoke, I got off my chair and went to where Lisa had been sitting. For an instant, I was thinking Hagana might object, but she paid me no heed and continued looking at the information display. Those black eyes of hers, with the laptop screen's white light reflecting into them, shone like jewels. When I sat next to her, I spun the laptop towards us. Drawn by that, Hagana's face followed it as if she really were a cat. As if she had only now realized where I was, she gave me a brief glance before turning back to the screen. Okay, stocks have a price. Weekdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., they're traded. When there are lots of buyers, the price obviously goes up. When there are lots of sellers, it goes down.
Obviously.
Right, but it's hard to predict that obvious thing. Hagana's eyes were wide with curiosity and looked steadily at me.
Why?
Because no one really knows whether that company would make a profit or not. Stocks are essentially a piece of ownership of a company. If you buy up all the stock that a company issues, then you'd become the owner of the company. If the company makes a profit and you control the company, then it's silly if you don't become rich, right? That's why the stock of profitable companies goes up.
And if they don't profit, it falls.
Exactly. However, whether a company is profitable every single day, no one, not even the company's workers, know. Take Emerald Industries, for example. On the moon and the Earth, they had around 300,000 workers. And if you add in their partners, there's a million. To know every last transaction they make, it's impossible.
Then what do we do?
Don't know. Everyone guesses and trades. Hagana looked up from the laptop and glared at me.
Lies!
It's true.
But then...
Hagana said that, then looked back at the screen, then back at me.
Everyone is betting money on this, aren't they?
Yep, that's why they're guessing very seriously. When Lisa, sitting across the table, heard this, she gave a little laugh. There's a number of ways to guess. One is to research the company and decide whether it's profitable or not. This Emerald Industries is the only company that can repair the space elevators. Every year, a huge amount of money is sure to come in. On top of that, they're involved in much of the development of the lunar surface. It's an ultra top-rank company.
They also made the dome?
That was from when we went to buy clothes. When I thought about her remembering that conversation, it made me a bit happy. Yep, they also made the two skies.
Amazing.
Yes, it's an amazing company, and everyone thinks it'll be profitable.
Then we just have to buy this?
Basically. But it's obvious that it's profitable, so everyone buys it. When everyone buys it, the price goes up. When that's the case, the price can go up past the price where it should be. See, there's this P/E here.
Yeah?
If stock is ownership of the company, and if a company had 100 shares, then one share would be worth 100th of the company.
Yes.
Now, the profit of that company divided among the shares would give an indication of whether the share price was high or not. I played with the laptop screen and enlarged the selected part. If one share of a company was earning only 10 mools, but the stock price was 1 million mools, while another company was earning only 10 mools but priced at 20 mools, which would you buy? Lisa was already clutching her head in her seat. Meanwhile, Hagana, without the slightest hint of doubt, looked at me directly and spoke.
The 20 mool stock.
Right. For the amount of money paid out, the amount of money earned is different. No matter how great the company, if the stock price continues climbing faster than its profits, then it will inevitably hit an inappropriate price.
And I'm supposed to predict that? With math?
Nope. When I said that, Hagana's brows furrowed. It probably seemed like I was being spiteful, or explaining things in a roundabout way, but I was sure Hagana didn't feel as upset as she looked. For some reason, I just felt that. But now, you've got a sense of what stocks are, right?
Just the parts you explained. How?
Hagana decided to change her tone halfway through on her own. Lisa had an extremely happy smile, and of course, Hagana didn't miss that. She made little embarrassed glances at Lisa, but since Lisa got up from her chair, she looked back at me in relief. So, in general, predicting a stock involves deciding whether it will be profitable or not. But, like I said before, no one knows what's going on every day, let alone next month or next year. There have been ultra top-ranked companies that had an accident, paid a deathly amount of compensation, and went out of business.
That
Happens quite a bit. That's why everyone uses a different method of predicting.
Math?
Aha, calm down. When I laughed, Hagana made a face like I had flicked her nose with my finger. Then she came back to herself and glared at me. From the pout on her lips, she was saying that was embarrassing. If I don't explain some other things first, it's hard to explain why. At my words, Hagana hesitated a little, but eventually nodded. This here is the graph of a stock price. Returning to the information page, I indicated the zigzagging line in the corner of the screen. Every day, the stock price is plotted, and the points are connected. They call these charts.
It's all choppy.
Exactly. But because Emerald Industries is profitable, it's overall going up in value.
Yeah.
For other companies, it doesn't work that way. For example, this one, or this, and so on.
Yeah.
So, there's as many graphs as there are kinds of stocks and times of trades.
Uh-huh.
Thousands of stocks, decades of time.
And so?
And so, some bored fellow noticed one day. In the center of that chart, there's a few distinctive things. Hagana stared at me, then looked at the chart on the screen. The most famous one would be this head and shoulders thing. See how in the center there's a mountain, and on both sides there are small mountains. Isn't it like a person's head and shoulders?
Somewhat.
When this shape comes up, the big mountain is often the peak for the price. And in the future, the chances it's going to slide down are high.
Really?
That's what they say. Don't get me mad, I'm saying that from looking at past charts. There's a way to predict what will happen in the future. Hagana looked like a kid used to being tricked and being very cautious, but she managed to nod. It was there that Lisa, who had stood up from her chair to do something by the sink, came over with cocoa. Anyway, the method of predicting this or that with a graph uses a form of math.
For example?
Hagana's expression changed. See how there's a smooth line behind the jagged ones?
That's also a stock price?
That's called a moving average. For example, if you start on May 1st, and from there take the last 30 days of prices, and then plot the average. Then, next to it on May 2nd, you take the last 30 days of prices and plot that. When you do that, the line becomes quite smooth.
Yeah.
Even if the daily movements are really zigzaggy, when you average them like this, you can sorta tell whether it's overall going up, down, or sideways. And there's a way of trading where you trust in these big movements. If the big line is trending upwards, then it feels like it's going to go up forever, doesn't it? Hagana looked at the graph and nodded sincerely. So, there's a way of trading where guys with too much time on their hands look at charts of companies over the days and, by looking at the moving averages, predict whether things will go up or down.
That kind of calculation isn't hard. I'm supposed to do that?
Well, you could, but given enough time, even I could do that. Analyzing charts was apparently the first thing beginners in stocks do. When you open an account, you can use a tool that has tons of famous charts, analyzing tools built into it for free. But before I started trading, I tried using it for a few things, and was sure that none of them was useful. So, the thing that I want you to try to do is one step beyond this stuff.
Beyond?
Yeah. Did you ever see the space elevator's service diagrams? Hagana blinked at my question.
The space elevators?
Yeah. That thing shows predictions about whether trash would strike it, right?
Yeah.
Physics can predict an insane accuracy the movements of a tiny lump that's flying around in orbit at a few tens of kilometers a second. It's predicting the future, right?
I don't really know much about physics, but probably yes.
If that's the case, there seems to be some that think that we might be able to predict the movements of stock prices with math, just like with heavenly bodies. Hagana looked quietly at me, and then at the screen.
So, essentially, find formula that draw this graph.
Exactly. Whether it's possible, I don't know. However, in the world, there are those who are making huge profits with such a method.
Can it be done?
Hagana's question was natural. Even myself, I was half believing, half doubting. However, it was better than doing nothing. Infinitely better. Even if we didn't know whether we'd reach our destination, as long as we didn't move, we'd never get there. Because of that, I myself ran away from my home village. I don't know. When I answered, Hagana grimaced and looked at me. Feeling Hagana's gaze on my cheek, I looked at the screen and spoke. But it's not about whether we can or can't. We have no choice but to do it. In the corner of my eye, I could see that Hagana was stunned. Her mouth tried to move and say something, but words didn't form, and her lips just chewed the air. Besides, the price is 200,000 mules. No entry fee. Is there a reason we shouldn't participate? Hagana had been lamenting over how her strength at math was so powerless at solving real-world problems. This investing contest would definitely become a tiny lead to Hagana finding a way forward. Of course, I would reap rewards myself. While looking at me, she held her breath. From there, she looked at the computer screen out of the corner of her eye and looked back at me. Her face was frozen stiff, like she had been left in the mother of all freezers. However, Hagana was staring at me. Those black eyes kept looking steadily at me. The moon wasn't a nice, friendly place that carried people who didn't try to walk on their own feet. However, those who try could have their hands held. I gazed back at Hagana, and then Hagana said this. And we are actually going to leave that there for this episode, and we're going to have to wait until next time to find out just what does she say. Is she going to take on this challenge and actually work with Hal? I sincerely hope so. Because I feel like this is where the plot's leading us. It makes sense for them to kind of join forces and figure out this investing contest so they can pay down the debt for the church shenanigans and everyone can live happily ever after on the moon. But we're going to have to wait and find out just exactly if that's what's going to happen or not. Until next week! Thank you all for joining me. As always, hit that subscribe button, click that thumbs up, post in the comments what you think of this story so far. Do you think she'll say yes? Do you think she'll say no? Will she just punch him in the face and walk away? Post in the comments. And preferably no spoilers for those that are viewing this or seeing this for the first time, like myself. And until next time, go be creative, go have some fun, go play some games, experience some stories of your own. Ta-ta all. And stared at the table, but I clearly heard her say she was sorry. When I looked at Lisa haltingly, she had a satisfied smile on her face.
I apologized.
When Hagana finally opened her mouth, that was what came out. Lisa's smiling face remained frozen that way, but I was more relieved at those words. I heard. When I said that, she finally looked at me. That usual piercing Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to another episode of Game Break. I am Charles, coming to you today with another episode of World and Economica. Now, last time round, we revealed our diabolical plan to Lisa to enter into the investing contest and team up with Hagana to do so. But now it's up to us to talk Hagana into it. And considering how things were when we kind of left off with Hagana, this might be a tough sell. I don't know how this is going to go down, but I'm hopeful. I mean, the plot is leading us towards a team, or a team up of some sort, so let's hope that this all works out and see where the story goes from here. Lisa called for me 10 minutes later, and I went out to the living room.
I'm sorry.
Those were the first words said to me the instant I returned to the living room and faced Hagana with a table between us. It was so sudden, I forgot to breathe. Her eyes still had some traces of her crying, and her lips were still somewhat sullenly tight with stubbornness. Hagana didn't look at me, and her gaze was the same, but the sharp, stray, cat-like suspicion wasn't there. It was more like a kid who was being stubborn and had on a brave face.
So, Hal, you're fine with this too, right?
It's good. I shrugged.
Well then, can you explain things more concretely? I didn't really get it with just one run-through.
With that embarrassed laugh, she probably really didn't understand the stuff very well. But, even if that